Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros and LEAP, helping students to succeed in all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school throughout Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with Test School and Life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 60 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to talk about today is ourselves. Welcome to the August 2025 edition of EXTEMP with Amy and Mike. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Mike. How are you doing on this beautiful weekend?
This beautiful weekend day. I'm doing great. And how are you doing?
I am doing well. The sun is shining. As we were talking before we started, the weather is getting cooler a little bit, so it feels good out to be outside right now compared to the last few weeks. So yeah, no, I mean, we're just, I think we're post-August SAT.
Yeah.
Normally that would feel like a real, like, oh, whoa, but it's not.
Oh, I know things are different now, but right, when we were talking about how nice it is to be out as opposed to how it was when it was hotter, how much time were we really able to get out? This has been a really busy summer, right?
It has been a very, very busy summer. But although for me, in a different way, my tutoring load has reduced, but it has meant that my business head has increased. And what's interesting there is working with students, there's something I love about logging onto a session and you're in it. Your head is all about that student in that hour. And which sometimes you could even argue we can get lost in that. You log into one session, you log into another session. And I kind of like that, that presence with students and being in it for them in that moment.
It's such an interesting concept you bring up because it really is a challenge for any service business leader, right? You create the enterprise probably based on a technical skill that you have.
Sure.
You could be a teacher or tutor. You could be a college counselor, you could be a hair cutter, you could be an accountant, right? Like whatever it is, the work brings you in, the work draws you in. And I know that the arc for a lot of entrepreneurs is to get themselves out of the business.
Yeah.
But depending on who you are and what your motivations were, your favorite part of the business might be the technical work.
It is. They say, yeah, obviously the big thing is always like, you got to work on your business, not in your business. But it's really tricky if what drew you to the business in the beginning was that real satisfaction of enjoying the work. And so I do think when you have to put, as I always call it, my business lady hat on, or that entrepreneurial sort of way of thinking, there can be like that can take over your thinking because it's never ending, right? The work of trying to improve your business could be a rat race that one or a hamster wheel that you're never going to get off of. And so sometimes it's figuring that out.
There's always a more, and that uncertain future is very different from what you're describing. The beauty of being very present.
Yes.
It's not uncertain. When you're working with a student, like you know exactly what you need to do or you'll find it out together, but it requires you to work on a short-term problem, not a long-term, never-ending problem.
Yeah. And there's comfort in that because it feels in that moment with students, it feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels like you're accomplishing so much right by the end of a session. Whereas when you're strategizing business or creating projects, as I'm sure like you obviously know, you're like, where's this going to go? How much time should I invest? There's more uncertainty there. Let's just say.
So if I could admit kind of what I've been doing since the time you and I started working together, I've been evolving my business so that I could give myself the indulgence of more student contact. And the way I allow that, the way I say this is still a good use of my time is because I've changed my business plan from less about, say, growing the number of tutors under me and expanding territory to adding things like TestBright, curriculum, a bunch of different things that the work that I do with students is required to keep me sharp enough to work on those pieces. Sure. So it's kind of like when I'm working with students, that is part curriculum research, right?
100%, right? Like, which is why, which I think is very interesting in our industry, we do find often, I don't want to say most, but I would say certainly a large percentage of the fellow test prep colleagues we have, it's rare to see the owner not having some book of tutoring to some
Sure.
extent, right? And
Sure.
I actually love that about our industry is that
Yes.
most of us are never that far removed from the work that our team or our tutors are doing, or the work with the students and how the students or the talking to the parents. We can that just, I think, kind of fuels the
I
work.
agree.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Now, this has been, I feel like this August has been better in terms of the number of engaged students, not just for me, but I think for your practice. And I think for many of our colleagues, like we're just seeing lots of students that embraced the opportunity to prepare for tests this summer or seek out academic support at a level that we might not have seen for years.
Well, I think actually I speculate it's the confluence of a number of different things, right? Um, I'll start with, at least in my neck of the woods, in Ohio, the Ohio State University announces like towards the end of March that test scores are required.
Yes.
And so obviously in Ohio, many, not all, but like a lot of kids will have Ohio State on their list, whether it's because it's affordable, it's a great institution, it's selective. And so I do think, at least in my neck of the woods, the idea of my demographic, a school that they're interested going back to test required,
Yeah.
created a real shift in terms of what do test scores mean for my application? Because as most counselors are saying to me, it means that you have to have a test score, because there's probably gonna be one school on your list that requires it, in which case that's going to dictate how you look at testing. So one thing I would throw out to you is I think this return to test requirement kind of caught the class of 2026 a little bit like, oh no, we got to like right the ship. And the summertime and this additional test in September for SAT, at least, that sort of was like, ooh,
I agree completely. We're talking about most of the great selective state flagships, with the exceptions of California, of course, and to a certain extent New York, and I don't consider the SUNY system a great flagship system, but most states, their desirable public university systems had to commit to testing just because of the huge number of applicants they get. And also the fact that if we're looking at a lot of these states that want to give money to the highest academic achievers, they couldn't base that on grades alone. And so we saw very early, right? Like in states like Florida or Georgia, test scores really mattered because of their respective state scholarships. And that clarity, the clarity among both the public university systems and more of the selective schools coming across and saying, yeah, this is like, we're test optional, wink, wink, to we're pretty much test required. And, like it's back in the old days, right? There have been paths for students to get into even the most selective schools without test scores commensurate with the academic achievement they're supposed to be showing. But that's a very small percentage of students.
Now, do you want to add? So I think there's some other factors. I'm curious if you can add some factors of why we think that what's fueling.
It must have been the spring, College Board announced a September SAT date. And it was kind of shocking. There's never, at least in the 30 plus years that you and I have been in this space, been a September test date. There's always been this gap. August, where there wasn't even an August date.
Well, remember, we used to go from June to October.
Which was crazy.
Yes.
So the August edition, when they exchanged,
they eliminated January,
which was a pretty dead month, for August, which is one of those popular test dates of the year. And then they added the September date during the time when the ACT usually runs. So this is very interesting.
It invaded ACT
both of these companies
territory.
ACT is, to their detriment, slow about scheduling their academic year. They have an issue with
it takes a long time to release
ahead of time test dates and deadlines for registration, and everybody waits. Well, College Board stole a watch on them, as they say. College Board,
it felt like that.
They took that second weekend of September And so College Board, so the ACT is earlier than usual. The September ACT is usually mid-September. Now it is the first weekend of September. And this SAT, students have a chance to take 2 SATs in the space of 3 weeks. They can take 3 SATs, August, September, October, before early decision deadline.
So that's sort
what
of
a
that
massive
schedule
benefit for test takers. Yeah.
That schedule was like a real calendar grab because we know more and more students are applying either early action or early decision. And so now what it did, at least we've seen, is, well, for another reason too, but incredible demand for SAT this time of year in a way that we've never seen it before. And so I do think that, students, if maybe they thought ACT before, well, now they had way more opportunities to retest on SAT than they were going to have for ACT.
It doesn't hurt that the ACT is new in September.
Well, so okay, there's
people,
the other.
So you were gonna, okay, right? I didn't
I'm
mean
teeing
to take
you
your
up for
point.
that one, Mike.
Yeah, but I'll also add that, right? You point out the seniors who are really embracing this opportunity to test multiple times before they have to submit their early decision or early action application. I also want to factor in all those rising juniors. Very often, the most competitive juniors who either they or their parents or somebody who is advising them informs them the value of prepping going into
early, getting out of the way,
grade as early as possible. If you're expecting to be an honors or an AP student, if you have lots of activities during the school year, you'll never have more time available to you than summer unless you're going away to sleepaway camp the whole summer. And if you're finished with Algebra 2 by the end of 10th grade, nothing's in your way. So these students now have more opportunities to nail down their best SAT and prepare for a National Merit Scholarship qualifying PSAT.
The PSAT. Yeah,
which is massive.
And I think that too, so as we've always seen, there has always been in the industry a shift when a test goes through a transitional period or changes. The typical trend has been an increased demand for the other test. So in our entire arc of our careers, Mike, right, that has always been a new iteration of the SAT, resulting in increased demand for the ACT. So in this particular case, it's the opposite, right?
It's true.
A transition for the ACT has created some uncertainty with families, in which case that means now we flip over to SAT. Oh, there are more SAT dates available. And so I think that's just made it a real interesting summer and demand, all these things coming together that have just kind of, and for me in Ohio, an unprecedented way, we're just doing way more SAT and PSAT. Like it's just been, so I will say I'm awfully proud of my prescience in early 2025, where I was like, we need to make sure that like at Leap and Sealy Test Pros, everyone's on board and everyone's doing the best SAT prep they can do. And that's turned out like we're getting so much demand that I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of saw that before I really realized it was going to happen.
I'm always proud of your prescience, Amy.
So so it's been an interesting summer, and it'll be interesting as we settle into the fall with the new ACT and kind of what reporting we get, like especially post September. And then obviously by October, when we see the October and we get a copy of the test and then my answer key.
You know it. It's going to be good stuff. Okay, let's shift gears. What's going on with you, Amy?
So I did post this on my social media, but I am going to share about sort of probably one of the most heartwarming things that's happened to me of late. And that is when I took a call on Thursday morning, before I usually take phone calls, actually, I was driving my daughter to school, and it didn't look like it was spam, which is a big thing. I don't answer if it looks like it's spam, but all of a sudden on the other end of the line was someone who I immediately knew who they were, like instantaneously. And it was the first student that I ever individually tutored. So I had taught classes before I met with her, but she was the very first. Like I had my 1-year cycle of teaching classes for Prince Review.
That's so wild.
She was the very first, so I call her student zero, right?
Student zero.
Which I know.
Your debut.
My debut. And Mike, I was like 20, I would have been 23 when I first started meeting with her, right?
That is unbelievable.
Which is so funny.
Everything must come rushing back.
I mean, there's so many reasons actually why I would remember, but long story short, she's reaching out, but I tutored her for the SAT, and when she was a junior. She had a younger sister, a couple years younger. Now, funny story, I was with Princeton Review then. And then I went to a local learning center, Townsend Learning Center. And it turns out her family reached out to Townsend Learning Center and realized, oh my gosh, Amy Seeley is tutoring for Townsend. So then I worked with her sister. And then she had a brother for GMAT. I worked with the older brother for GMAT. And then later on, I think by the time later on, she wanted GRE tutoring. So I tutored her for the GRE. Then she was going to get her PhD. So I tutored her. She had to take the GRE again to get the scores up. So long story short, like the arc of our story kind of kept coming back. And her mother, Jenny, was especially unique. She was one of those kind of moms where it's like, and so of course I remember her mom very well. But in any case, then fast forward, probably about 14 years ago, I'm standing in a line at CVS at the pharmacy, and who is standing behind me but this student? And she is very much pregnant, like very much pregnant. And so we were chatting, and it was fun to see her there in line. And I remember her saying this to me. She goes, "You just have a special gift." She's like, "You just have a special gift." And I was like, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Right. And I still remember this interchange. And so then, of course.
Wait, did she clarify what your gift was? Because that could mean
tutoring,
a lot of things.
Of tutoring, right?
Okay.
She always brings up, by the way, the bow tie method, which was something that Prince Review taught. Solving proportion. Or no, the bow tie was for comparing whatever. But in any case, this call on Thursday morning was from her. And that baby, right? That baby is now an 8th grader, right? So now I'm like laughing, making this connection. And she is reaching out because she's wanting to do some prep for the high school admissions, which obviously we do a lot of that. And she's asking me all kinds of questions.
This is unprecedented in my experience.
It's a weird.
No, I'm sure that it happens, but I don't know of instances where a tutor has been able to work with 2 generations, a family.
Well, and so that has started for me.
I'm sure it happens because it happens to like
sometimes
say,
you don't know.
Doctors.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes you don't even know because obviously for a woman who has the last name could be different, whatever, and you don't even recognize it, right? But she like led with this, and she said her daughter said to her, "Oh my God, she must be really old then."
That's great.
So, but in any case, at the end of that phone call, I was giving her some advice. I'm saying to reach out. We're hopefully going to have coffee soon, and it was sort of, I think. When you've been doing this as long as we have and you invest so much time and energy, it just was a real reward. It was like a real gift to get that phone call and to feel like, wow, like the work that we do matters. And some things that we do that we have no sense of like the impact. I don't know. It was, like I said, it was probably one of the best phone calls I can recall like ever.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
It was a great thing.
How professionally and personally satisfying that must be for you.
Yeah. And I can sometimes be kind of a hard nut, like emotionally.
I never heard of that before.
So for me, it was just, it gave me all the feels, Mike. I gave me all of the feels that day. So yeah. So that was my kind of like heartwarming moment.
That's beautiful.
So tell me more about what you're up to. And like, I want to know more because I know we've talked about you starting to do, tutor training sessions for TestBright. So tell us more, especially we like me who are currently using TestBright with our SAT students. Tell me more about what that's going to look like and when is that starting?
Yeah, so good question. I'm still kind of architecting it, as they say. So this kind of ties into what we're doing next month, right? Because September, I've committed to offering TestBright Tutor Training sessions. I didn't go with Tutor Academy.
We talked about that.
As your fave, but I also didn't go with my fave of Tutor School. I kind of split the difference.
Tutor School, I gotcha.
And yeah, I'm taking feedback from educators who are like, I sent out a questionnaire and just like, number of hours and who do you want this for and what are your goals? And it's helping me crystallize what the initial offerings will be, knowing that this will be in beta. It's
Mm-hmm.
certainly not going to be a training session, a training program restricted to people using TestBright. As a matter of fact, I expect most people who are going to sign up for it aren't using TestBright yet
Mm-hmm.
because my TestBright users, they get access to free office hours and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So,
Right.
but certainly this idea that the goal is to do some kind of program, one for math, one for reading, writing, focusing on both SAT and ACT,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 8 to 16 hours. And I'm going to train tutors like I train my tutors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to include teach backs,
Oh,
right? I don't want
nice.
this
Oh,
to just be
wow.
passive. I want this to be a practicum. I want people to walk out of there feeling, whether they're experienced educators or brand new to our profession, I want them to walk out feeling, wow, now I understand not the big picture of education, but the practical requirements of being a great test prep tutor in the restricted, college admissions space. I'm only doing
Mm-hmm.
SAT,
Right.
ACT. 8 to 16 hours isn't everything you need, but I think about the difference between, you might have a master's in education,
Mm-hmm.
but you still have to do a practicum where you teach on a daily
Right.
basis
Right.
before you're allowed to teach in a school. And I think about the one of the biggest challenges in our profession, in our industry, is bringing teachers through a training program to the point where when they are working with students, it isn't obvious that they're junior tutors. Like it
Right.
isn't obvious it's their first time. I always try to teach my tutors that your first student can't know that they're your first student.
Actually, funny story. Right. No, that was a big deal in the beginning of being trained was like, you never want to reveal that. Like it's sort of a vulnerability. But then eventually when you're better, you're good, then you can actually acknowledge things that you're learning. But in the beginning, it's like
Of
nobody wants to
course. And
be,
when I say they can't know, I don't mean like don't spill it.
no,
I
but
mean
there's
it shouldn't
something
be obvious that you're
that you
fumbling
are right, that
through.
you like, this is your
Yeah,
first rodeo.
that's right. So I'm really hoping to have my dates figured out. We have some other things coming up in September that we're going to talk about
Yeah.
that are getting in the way, and I'm kind of getting my head up after the run to the August SAT, but now I can put some dates on the calendar and try things out. You know me. I like to like I want the bones of it to be what it'll be like going forward, but at the same time, I'm happy to iterate and try out some different
Sure.
permutations of hours and activities to make it meaningful. And I'm
Yeah.
really going to depend on our colleagues, the
Yeah.
people who are involved to help make sure that every time I run it, it gets better. And then if this is something that the market wants, then I'll commit to running, monthly or bi-monthly going forward.
I'm excited. I can't wait to participate in that.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
excited
you're gonna right.
that you would even think that I could teach you
I'm
something.
gonna try to learn from the master. What is this? What does he have to share with me? Right?
Well, I have a lot. We know that I have a lot to
No, we
share
no,
with
we
you
do
because
no,
the next
exactly.
thing that we're doing that is more imminent is we're going on a trip together.
I no, actually last night I'm like, oh my gosh, 2 weeks from tonight, we're gonna be in Bozeman, Montana. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, now it's like the real countdown, right? So
Yeah.
no, so we're gonna be in Montana, which of course we're gonna go with Scott and Claire. And much like our trip to Yosemite last year, like an opportunity to combine a lot of things we like: the outdoors, nature, maybe a little birding, learn a little bit more. Um, but also like talking about work and just
It's a
hanging out and
professional
being
retreat.
friends.
That's how I
It's
see
a
this. Is a professional
it's a
retreat.
professional
It's a
retreat.
lot of fun. And see, I think that is a scenario where I teach you a lot about field craft. How to handle yourself in the wild.
Yeah, I love this little exclusive group too that we've sort of created
I
amongst
don't
us.
feel it's exclusive so much as, like we just coalesced as
We
feeling
do.
like we were
We
four people that could really travel well together.
Yeah, it's when it's which and at our it's fun at our age to discover new people and but that you can get along and you can understand each other's rhythms or whatever. So yeah, I'm super. I can't wait. Although you will
I've
not be
never
my
been to
seat.
Montana.
You will not be my seatmate on the plane, although Scott will, because I fly through Chicago, and I think Scott and I then fly from Chicago to Montana together. But
yeah, I gotta check and see if I'm connecting. I thought I might be connecting at the same time as you. I have to look at my flight.
Oh yeah, we'll have to, because I got to figure out what your flight stuff is. But yeah, so that's going to be our. Actually, it's a fun personal and professional thing that we're looking forward to. Yeah, because basically it's like buckle. But then you say buckle up because I'm like, oh, September, October for us is like PSAT craziness at school. So I get this little respite trip for you with you guys,
and then really poorly planned because of how busy. We didn't anticipate how busy the September SAT would be. I really can't afford to get away, but we're making the time. I'm not so sure that I'm not going to be stuck tutoring for part of that time.
Well. Yeah. Well then,
but that's fine. If it happens, it happens. I
totally understand.
But I do have so many students running to September that we never would have had before.
Well, it's actually funny. This would not be the first trip that I've been on where someone in the travel circle is tutoring.
That's always happening.
Yeah, exactly.
At our conferences,
and by the way, if that happens, I'm going to be the little, person sitting in the background listening to your tutoring sessions.
You're going to be the devil.
Because I've heard a few
distract me with
people have listened to mine, and so it's funny to be like, oh, let me. But it's then you recognize in what someone else is doing. Oh, I do that too. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Do you have anything else happening in September?
No, pretty much it's going to be the trip and then just PSAT all the time.
I can't wait for back to school. I can't wait to start visiting school counselors again and dropping in. I missed all my friends in the counseling offices.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful time.
It's gonna be a good time.
It's a perfect time of year. Very exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, obviously we could talk about ourselves all day. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
It is always a pleasure to speak with you, Mike.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to speak with you.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
Did you enjoy this episode as much as we did? Find expanded links and more for this and all of our episodes at our show page at testsandtherest.com. While you're there, be sure to explore everything the larger TestBright site has to offer, including real, expert, unbiased answers to the toughest admissions testing questions. Of course, we'd love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to Test and the Rest on your favorite podcast platform. If there's a topic or guest you'd like us to feature, just let us know and spread the word.